In this video, I attempt to beat the whole Cuphead DLC with only the uncharged charge shot in under 6 hours. If that wasn't already hard enough, I'm also not allowing myself to take any damage, use any supers, EX, or charms, and this all has to be done on expert mode. The uncharged charge shot is one of the weakest weapons in the game, so bosses are going to take a lot longer to beat than they normally would. And I have to individually tap the trigger for each shot, which doesn't make this challenge any easier. If you enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Do I have what it takes to beat these 6 incredibly difficult bosses of the Cuphead DLC, or will I let the time pressure get to me? Watch to the end of the video to find out. Our first boss of the challenge was Glumstone the Giant, and I could already tell from the first phase that this was not going to be easy. Between the many gnomes on screen and all the attacks Glumstone himself threw at us, there was a lot going on. Despite the difficulty of this first phase, I actually managed to make it to phase 2 within the first couple minutes of starting the challenge. I didn't mind phase 2 nearly as much as phase 1, but that's not to say it wasn't hard though. I constantly had to judge the position of this ball Glumstone threw at me, all while having to watch above and below for popping up gnomes. To my surprise, however, I found myself at the final phase after just a few minutes, and I was really hoping I might get this first boss out of the way. I'm not getting a lot of damage here. Ah, darn it. Ooh. Well, I guess I couldn't expect to beat Glumstone this early on in the run, and I wasn't all that disappointed. However, this was my first time ever attempting a challenge in which I had a time limit to get it done, and even though I had a lot of time left on the clock, I was feeling quite nervous that I'd be stuck on Glumstone for a long time. This caused me to die in the first phase just before beating it many times. No! Please! Ah! Ah! Oh my gosh, we were almost done. Ah, darn it. Oh, come on! Ah! Oh my gosh, why do I keep doing that? Come on, I want to get past it this time. Oh my gosh. No! Oh my gosh, why do I keep doing that? Ah! We were only 20 minutes into the challenge, but I was already feeling the pressure. I really didn't want to take a long time on the very first boss because I knew I'd only feel more pressured on later bosses, knowing I was running out of time. I knew I had to get a hold of my nerves if I wanted any chance at completing this challenge, so I did just that, and once again, I found myself at the final phase, ready for a rematch. Yes, sir! First boss out of the way. Woohoo! I was super hyped to beat Glumstone and even more ecstatic that it had taken less than 25 minutes. However, our next boss, Moonshine Mob, was going to be one of the hardest bosses of this challenge, and I knew I'd need the extra time I bought myself. Okay, none of my shots even hit there. Come on, man. There we go. Okay. Not there we go, never mind. Well, I was back to my old habit of jinxing myself, but overall I really didn't mind phase 1, and most of the time I'd find myself beating it. Problems started to occur in phase 2, however. This phase took quite a while to complete because of how little damage we were doing, and these sound waves were moving around very quickly, which made for many close calls and deaths. Oh crap! Oh, I jumped up on accident. Ah! Yes! Oh! Ah! Darn it. I shouldn't have jumped up there. Hey! Ah! Oh! Oh, come on. You have to be freaking kidding me. Oh, wait. We did, however, start to make it to phase 3 more often, but this was by far the hardest phase of Moonshine Mob. There were almost always at least 2 of these bug balls bouncing around at once, and I had to watch out for the anteater's snout as well, which made for a very stressful phase. Let's just say I spent a good deal of time on phase 3. Oh my gosh, again? Ah. Oh no! Oh my gosh. Oh wow, okay, that was really good in terms of damage. Got a lot of damage in there. Okay, well, I don't know why I did not register that. Oh, well. All right, we're good. Oh, no, we're not. We're doing it here and now. Okay, well, that's great. Well, it seemed like even my computer didn't want me to complete this challenge. I had passed the hour mark, and while I still had a lot of time left on the clock, I started to get worried, thinking about how much longer I might be stuck here, because it felt like there was just no end in sight to phase 3. That was until this attempt. Come on! Well, all I had left was this puny little snail. He had barely any health, and his attacks were a breeze compared to the previous phase, so I should finish Moonshine Mob with no problem, right? Well, if you've watched any of my streams, you'll know that I failed challenges because of this little guy in the past, and I was so nervous that this would be the end of my run. If I died here, I didn't know how long it would be before I could complete phase 3 again, so I pulled myself together as best as I could, and... well, I'll let the clip speak for itself. I have a strategy here, chat, trust me. Yes! Oh, yes! Oh my gosh, we did it. Yes, sir! Despite how nervous I was, I made it past the great barrier of Moonshine Mob, and I was so relieved. Not only that, but I still had over 4.5 hours remaining to complete this challenge, so I was feeling a lot less pressured on time. However, there were still 4 more bosses left in this challenge, and while I believed our next boss, Mortimer Freeze, wasn't going to be as bad as Moonshine Mob, I knew he could still very easily give me a hard time. Mortimer's first phase wasn't too bad for me. I've practiced dodging these icicles more times than I can count, and Mortimer had very little health in this phase, which allowed us to get past it almost every time. Phase 2, on the other hand, gave us a bit more trouble, however. Between everything happening on screen at once, I found myself faced with a barrage of difficult attacks, and these little ice cubes and flying popsicles put an end to quite a few of our runs. Oh, dude. Oh, darn it. Mortimer is still... gonna be tricky. And tricky Mortimer was indeed. This phase really lasted a while because of how much health Mortimer had. But less than 10 minutes in, I found myself making it past phase 2 and onto the final phase. Oh my gosh, this phase is really long. Come on. Oh, how are you still going? Yes. I was pretty happy to be at the final phase, but I knew that this one was going to be the hardest of Mortimer Freeze. There were 3 difficult attacks I was going to have to worry about here, and I felt quite intimidated. I had only been on Mortimer for 10 minutes, and I had no practice using the uncharged charge shot on the final phase. Could I really beat it on my very first attempt? Yes, sir! First time on the final phase, let's go! I was so surprised that it only took me 10 minutes to beat Mortimer. I was feeling great with less than an hour and 20 minutes on the clock and already halfway through this challenge. We were now onto the Howling Aces, and I was feeling pretty confident, expecting this to be the easiest boss of the challenge. Phase 1 definitely turned out to be a bit trickier than I thought it was going to be, mainly because of these homing fire hydrants. It was fairly difficult to actually get rid of them with the uncharged charge shot, and all the time I had to spend shooting them decreased a lot of shots that could have otherwise been damaging the Bulldog pilot. I just have to be really on point with my aim. Not like that. Oh my gosh, that's so hard. Eventually, though, I did make it to the second phase. Phase 2 only had 1 attack I had to dodge and was really quite short, so I beat it on my first attempt, meaning I was now onto the final phase. Now, I've practiced this phase a whole lot, but I was going to have to go through a lot of rotations of the dog bowl and laser attacks. At this point, it had been less than 10 minutes since I beat Mortimer Freeze, and this was my first attempt at the final phase. Surely, I couldn't expect to beat another boss in under 10 minutes, but despite the odds, I pushed forward, dodging each laser and dog bowl perfectly, seconds, feeling like minutes, until... Alright, turn it again. Back to it. Yes, sir. Hey. Ah, we did it, chat. Oh my gosh. Wow, I cannot honestly believe that. For the second time, I beat a boss in under 10 minutes. I was truly astounded. There were only 2 bosses left, and I was now on the secret boss. This whole boss fight is generally quite short, and there are only 2 attacks to dodge. Basically, you can only deal and take damage in the direction you're looking. That being said, this boss sometimes gives me the hardest time in many of my challenges, like my lobber only challenge, in which it took me 3 hours to complete this boss, as it can be quite disorientating. To say the least, going into this fight, I expected to be met with trouble. But I soon figured out that the secret boss might not be the issue I thought it would be, and a few attempts in, I came to this run. Yes! Oh my gosh, what? Second try? Wow. It had been less than 5 minutes since I beat the Howling Aces, and I was already done with the secret boss. I could not believe that I had beaten the last 3 bosses in less than 30 minutes. And with 5 out of the 6 bosses completed, that meant I only had Chef Saltbaker left. Now, at this point, I was feeling pretty good. I really bought myself a lot of extra time, as I still had a little less than 4.5 hours on the clock. Now, you may be thinking I should easily have this challenge in the bag, as it only took me an hour and a half to beat 5 bosses, and I only have 1 left to go. While my situation was quite favorable, I knew that Saltbaker was without a doubt going to be the hardest boss of this challenge. I knew this whole boss fight could be as long as 5 minutes because of my ultra low damage output, and every attack being thrown at me was going to be the hardest the game had to offer. It was me versus Saltbaker, the final boss of this challenge. All I could do now was throw everything I had at Saltbaker and race against the ever-shortening time limits. You know, sometimes what you believe to be the hardest part of your journey can be over in the blink of an eye, not giving you nearly the amount of trouble you thought it would. Well, on my very first attempt, I found myself approaching the final phase, wondering if this would see the end of my journey. Dang, I'm really surprised that we're doing this well on our first try. Let's not jinx it though, please. Okay, well, that's... Yeah, I jinxed it. Beating Saltbaker was not gonna be that easy. First off, I had to deal with the insanity that was phase 1. There was just so much on screen at once, and I would have to survive for a long time here. But thankfully, I have practiced S-ranking Saltbaker a lot, so phase 1 didn't give me too much trouble, which was a relief. Things did not get any easier in phase 2 though. While there wasn't as much happening on screen as there was in phase 1, I had to be incredibly precise here. One wrong movement and I'd find myself taking damage, sending me all the way back to phase 1, which I knew would add a ton of time if I died a lot here. To say the least, I was quite nervous during my attempts at phase 2, and I had so many close calls. Woo! Oh my gosh, that was pretty hard. Wow, holy crap. However, I did start to make it to phase 3 after some practice, which by far gave me the least amount of trouble. I found most of the time I could crouch under the bouncing salt ballerinas, and Saltbaker had the least amount of health in this phase. But phase 4 would take a huge step up, being harder than all 3 previous phases for me. This right here is the main reason I was so nervous to fight Saltbaker. All I had to do was dodge Saltbaker's heart that bounced around while jumping up these platforms, but this phase really broke me down after a while. It was so easy to make one small mistake and take damage here, and I knew this phase could last up to 2 minutes by itself. So many times I'd plow through the first 3 phases flawlessly, only to die within the first 30 seconds of this final phase. Ouch. Well, there goes that. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh. This last phase is so hard, dude. It was a battle of endurance. I still had about 4 hours left to beat Saltbaker, but this challenge really was like no other challenge I had attempted thus far. I simply just had to survive and keep shooting, but this final phase was just so intimidating. This was a true test of nerves and skill. Looking back, I don't know how many times I died on this final phase, but I knew my winning attempt was somewhere in me. I just had to find it. So I kept pushing forward, and eventually I found myself surviving past 1 minute and 30 seconds in this final phase, which I hadn't even come close to in all my previous attempts. Had I found my winning attempt, or was this just another drop in the bucket of tries it would take me to complete this challenge? Oh my gosh. Oh. Oh. I can't keep this up much longer. I can't keep this up much longer, chat. I can't. Yo! What? What? Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh my gosh. No way. We did it. Dude, we just did it. Oh my gosh. Literally one of the hardest challenges I've ever done. Well, we had done it. We were nowhere close to the 6-hour time limit, completing the challenge in just over 2 hours, but nonetheless, I had beaten the whole Cuphead DLC with only the uncharged charge shots. This really was one of the hardest challenges I've completed, but I had so much fun with it, and I hope you all enjoyed the time limit twists I put on the challenge as well. I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, but I think that about does it for me. I reckon I've earned myself some time to sit back, relax, and take a bit of a break. That is until my next challenge. Peace out, fellas.